Bad Boys, the original Bad Boys movie, is the reason why Will Smith is a movie star.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would credit Independence Day, but that came 1 year after the first Bad Boys movie.
Right.
In 2010, I wrote this big story about Michael Bay, and I interviewed so many famous people. And now when I look back on that, working on that piece, I'm like, how did this happen? I interviewed Steven Spielberg. I interviewed Ben Affleck.
Right.
I interviewed like Scarlett Johansson. Tons and tons.
It was for GQ in a time when people
I know.
still
Well,
did magazines.
It reminds me of a different era, but it was an oral history of Michael Bay's career. And of course, he has worked with most of the big movie stars over that period of time. And he's kind of a joke now, so people don't think about it this way. But I had a 45-minute phone call with Will Smith just about Michael Bay. And he was the goddamn most charming person I'd ever talked to in my life. He was so funny and so nice and so smart. And obviously, he's Will Smith for a reason. But he told this long story, which he has told before, but he told the long story about taking the shirt off on the bridge and running down, and the moment that you were referencing earlier as the transformative moment of his professional life. That was the moment when Michael Bay was like, this is what I'm going to do for you. And this is what you can do.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
And he's made so many great movies. It's very strange that, he's made 4 movies in 4 years. He's made Bad Boys 3. He's made King Richard. He's made Emancipation. And he's made Bad Boys 4.
About Emancipation.
And that is really the polarity of the Will Smith experience. Big time blockbusters and these reaches for prestige. Sometimes the reaches work, sometimes they don't. Emancipation really did not work. King Richard, of course, obviously worked. It's a movie I really liked a lot. He won an Academy Award for Best Actor. But there is something missing in the Will Smith story that we talked about when we did the Hall of Fame, that we talked about over the course of this show for years and years, because we both really like him as a star, where he never really takes on a cool movie. Django is the biggest example where he turned down Django. And I think about Django in my mind with Leo, Will Smith, and Christoph Waltz. And I'm like, God damn, and Sam Jackson. And I'm like, Jesus, like that would be the most powerful quartet of men in a movie since when? Since The Magnificent Seven, you know what I mean? Like it would just be so, but he never goes for the movie that would be hip, that would be interesting, that would reveal more about him. He's a very good actor. He can do The Pursuit of Happiness. He can do, 6 Degrees of Separation. But watching him in this movie, I'm like, cool, he's gotten his thing back that he needed. But he has now done for himself just what Tom Cruise did, which is that he was like, things got scary there for a little bit. I made a big public gaffe. Everyone thinks I'm weird. What I need to do is return to safe harbor of my franchise, be really good at that, and just stick with it. And I feel like that's what he's going to do. I feel like he's going to stick with it. If you heard tomorrow, Independence Day 3 is announced, and he stars it, would you be surprised?
No. And maybe I would even be okay with it. I mean, I don't know whether I mind the safe harbor as much as you do, because
I just see so much more because I know how smart he is.
Sure, and so talented. And I think in some ways, like, I think he just has a different rubric than you and I do of like what's cool and what's interesting to him. And he has talked, as you said, he is like incredibly smart and charming, obviously, but thinks about his career in a very specific, intentional way, and has talked about like the math that he does before picking a certain project. And I think
he has like a formula.
Yeah, and he just has different inputs than you or I do, and that's fine. It has served him well, even if we haven't gotten like the hippest movie in the world. But part of the reason that it does work is because of Independence Day and Men in Black and like Bad Boys, whatever. Like that is a superpower. Not everyone can do it. So going back to what works and being really charming. Did you see him on Hot Ones talking about Michael Mann?
I didn't watch that, no.
So I only watched the clips because I still just can't believe that's how we ask questions. But anyway.
I think it's a great show.
It's an amazing show, but I can only watch the edited clips.
Because it's too gross for you?
No, like the hot sauce. I don't care about the hot sauce. No, the expositional like robot leading questions are very strange to me. So, but
so you're a man, and when you're a man, you have certain tendencies, and a man's tendencies are to procreate and star in films.
No, like the Michael Mann question was something about like you were in Ali with Michael Mann. What was it about Michael Mann's authenticity that led you to do something else? I'm not.
It is a little sideline reporter.
I'm not joking.
Yeah. What did you see out there in the third quarter, Will?
It was so strange. But then he just like does an amazing a 2-minute animated,
I didn't see
really
this.
excited, and insightful take on what it means to be an actor in a Michael Mann film and what that experience is like and what's unique about it and why he wanted to do it. It reminded me of the Michael Bay thing, but in shorter form. And I was like, oh, right. Like you can totally still do all of this if we put you in the right spots. And now it's like Hot Ones instead of, the Tonight Show or whatever, which is funny. But he still can do it. So I'm okay with him still doing it.
Yeah, I think the other signature example of this is passing on The Matrix to do Wild Wild West.
Yeah, that was bad.
And it's because I think he either thinks about box office or, like I said, prestige, like a kind of award worthiness.
Right.
And Ali, of course, was an awards play. It's an incredibly important American story. It is one of the best American filmmakers of the last 75 years. Like, all the pieces make sense. And that movie is good and not great, in my opinion. A very interesting film. But it's in this bottom tier of the Michael Mann movies for me.
You're talking about Ali and not Wild Wild West.
Ali, no. Wild Wild West, of course, is a 5-star masterpiece that everyone loves and has no controversy.
But there is also a thing. I mean, Wild Wild West is a travesty, even though that song is going to be playing in my head for the rest of the day now. I mean, it was just like, what a rich time to be 14 and impressionable.
On paper, you could see it. You're like Barry Sonnenfeld coming off of cool movies plus Kevin Kline.
No, you can't see it. But that's okay. The thing is that I think even at that point in 99, it's not that he was bigger than The Matrix, but he has always been conscious of Will Smith, like the star. And if you're doing The Matrix, I understand that is like Keanu's breakthrough, but that is a breakthrough as much for the Wachowskis and for everything that happens in the movie itself.
I think it could have had the exact same effect on Will Smith's career. Like, Keanu was in Speed. He was in Point Break. Like, he was a big action star, and it took him to another level.
Yeah, but still, Keanu is still, to this day, not Will Smith, respectfully.
I think Keanu's probably had a more interesting career ultimately.
Well, sure, but that's what I'm saying. But I think that Will Smith does look for it in terms of like, I'm building Will Smith.
Yes,
I'm not building like a
more business than art.
Yeah,
honestly, it's more.
So I wouldn't make that decision either, but I do think there is a logic to what he is doing. It's just not what you or I would always do.
And I think the burden on him is different than the burden on someone like Keanu or Ryan Gosling or whatever. He's a black superstar. He's a black superstar crossover figure, which is extraordinarily rare in the history of Hollywood. In many ways, he was the first megawatt A-list black star in action movies. Denzel kind of came to action movies later in his career.
Right.
So he did something that had never really been done before, and I think he felt a lot of pressure to continue to stay on top, which is why he organized his career that way, which makes a lot of sense. And in fact, in the story of Ride or Die, the new Bad Boys movie, 44% of the people who showed up for the movie were black audiences, which of course makes sense because I couldn't even remember the last film that was released wide this year that was sort of marketed to black audiences. There just has not been a lot. Right. They're underserved. We talk about it all the time. And so he is obviously working in that mode too, being mindful of that. So it's hard to compare careers when it comes to something as weighty as like the cultural implications of what he represents. I just know that like Will's never been in a Spike movie. You know what I mean? Like Will doesn't go for challenging, complex, maybe not surefire hit movies. And you can tell he gets a little bit anxious if something doesn't feel like the package fits together perfectly.
Right.
And so it leaves you with like, okay, Bad Boys 4. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. I won't think about it again. I won't watch it again.
Right.
You know, I didn't hate it, but it just kind of drifts off and he gets to continue on. I think if he took on the Tom Cruise approach, maybe of like being more in the bones of the movie, where he was like, this is almost organized around my monomania, I would be more interested in that. I don't know if he's capable of that.
Yeah. It is a very Tom Cruise style playbook, and I think he's even talked about studying the films of Tom Cruise, kind of like literally as his playbook. But I don't know. He still is so reliant on outward charm that you can't do the Tom Cruise like this is how you have to, your motion smoothing thing as you can't become so removed that is its own form of fascination, right? Like Tom Cruise and now at this point is like a little bit of an oddity and like just throwing himself out of planes all the time. And that has taken on its own aura. And so we all go to see what strange thing Tom Cruise is going to do next. But Will Smith is still banking on relatability. He's still just like posting like crazy to social media. He's still, I mean, I guess Tom Cruise also showed up to Tenet, but you know,
he's not going to Hot Ones.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think he's maybe still just trying to be like the people's champion. And he like this weekend, it kind of worked.